Hello my friends, welcome back to another video, or if you're new here, welcome in. My name is Ian with Out of This World Reader, and we have reached the halfway point of 2022. I feel like yesterday it was January, and then I blinked, and now we're in June. So this year has just been completely flying by, and I feel like this year has just been one of the best reading years I've had in a while. And I feel like every month I just find new favorites, and I've just been loving all the books that I've kind of been picking up so far this year. I've finally found kind of like my niche genres, finding new authors and everything like that. But since we are at the halfway point this year, it is time to do the mid-year freakout tag. I really want to start kind of doing this every year. It's just a couple different questions asking about like what's your favorite so far, what new author you've discovered, all kinds of just interesting questions that are going to be centered around these first 6 months of the year. So I think without further ado, let's just get in with the first question. So the first one is, it's going to be tough to kind of talk about it. It is your best book so far this year. And like I mentioned earlier, like I've just picked up so many books that could be considered like my favorite, and the top 10 at the end of the year is just gonna be, I don't even want to think about that. But since this other book is mentioned in the second question, the other one had to go to The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. That was just like, it was just came to me at the right time, and it's just so lighthearted, just a breeze of a read that's kind of like a little bit of a palate cleanser between a bunch of just epic fantasy that I've kind of been binging. A breath of fresh air, and it just like the characters involved with it, all the children and everything. Like you will be hearing several of those children throughout this video with kind of like favorite characters and all that. But just the way that TJ Klune kind of created this story, fleshed out the characters, and developed the story was just so outstanding and fantastic. There was very little that I found that I didn't like about the story. I feel like it was just one of the best reads that I've read in a while, so I think it had to deserve the spot. But there's a second book that was probably tied or just topped it off, that it will be mentioned in the second question. But I did a whole kind of reading vlog if you want to learn more about my thoughts on this one. And so the second question is your favorite sequel that you picked up so far this year. And there was no doubt in my mind that this book was going to get a 5 stars. I feel like The Shadow of the Gods, that was just something that I haven't experienced so far. It kind of had a blend of just like old Norse mythology, but John Gwynne kind of made it his own and created a story of the Bloodsworn kind of trilogy that I've just fallen in love with. All the characters, they're just some of the best I've ever read. So The Hunger of the Gods by John Gwynne has to be the best sequel that I picked up this year. And it honestly, man, like, I don't want to kind of hypothesize this early on in the year, but I feel like this will be, not, if it's not my number one, it will definitely be in my top 3 books for this year. I just love how he's kind of expanded on this world that he's created in The Shadow of the Gods, added on just a whole bunch more, even though like some people felt like it was just like a giant kind of travel monologue. Like I just really enjoyed spending more time with these characters and learning how these situations are kind of developing their character arc, as well as kind of developing the world building. Like there's just so much going on with this. It added on 2 more perspectives in here, and like I could go on and on about this. Like I just can't wait for the 3rd book to come out. I hope it comes out here pretty soon so I don't have to wait very long, because this was just fantastic. And I actually bought Malice so I can dive into that quartet, I believe. And I just have a feeling that John Gwynne, even though I've only read 2 books, is one of my top 5 favorite authors of all time. So if you haven't checked out the series yet, give it a try. Next up, we have some new releases that you haven't read yet. And I've done a whole bunch of kind of anticipated releases, and I will have one more coming out here pretty soon. So if you want to check out those videos, I'll make sure to include the links. But 2 that I'm really excited for, and I actually will have one of the copies coming here pretty soon. But that is going to be The Stardust Thief by Chelsea Abdullah and For the Throne by Hannah Witten. this is the For the Throne is actually the sequel for the Wolf, and I believe this is actually a duology. So I'll be excited to see how kind of this finishes off. But For the Throne, I checked out last year and I really enjoyed it. I believe that was her debut novel, and it didn't feel like a debut novel. Like, it had some kind of things that I didn't like, but for a debut, I thought it was really good. And then The Stardust Thief. This is kind of like a Middle Eastern inspired fantasy. It's got jinn and just kind of, I think it's inspired by 1001 Nights or Arabian Nights. So there's just a lot going on with that. And I actually have a copy coming here pretty soon. As soon as it gets here, I'll probably be just devouring it. Because this is just like a kind of like a type of genre or a fantasy that I just really want to dive into more. Not so much kind of Western inspired fantasies, but just more. And I've heard great reviews about it. I've also heard some not so great things, but I have a feeling that since I've enjoyed the David Bad trilogy as it's kind of progressed with each book, like this one will be just as good. I'm hoping. I believe this is her debut as well. So we'll just see how those books go. I've got a ton that I really want to read, but those two, those are the two on the top of my head. And then this next one actually goes kind of hand in hand. It is your most anticipated release for the second half of the year. And three that I'm really excited for is Upgrade by Blake Crouch. I'll probably read anything by Blake Crouch. I really enjoyed Dark Matter and Recursion, and I really need to check out more of his backlisted kind of catalog that he's got. And then Babel by R.F. Kuang, kind of set in Oxford, a little bit of dark academia, throwing a little magic, sounds like a blast. And then Fury Song by Rosaria Munda, which is the final book in the Aurelian cycle, and this is kind of Russian Revolution with dragons kind of involved. So there's just a lot going on with that. It's a YA trilogy, and I'm kind of scared to see how it's going to turn out, but I have a feeling that that'll be kind of like an all-time series that will just kind of be among my stars of kind of favorite books of all time. And then we have, this is always the toughest part for me, your biggest disappointment. And for this, I did a whole review, so if you want to learn more, check out that video. But it is All of Us Villains by Amanda Foody and Christine Lynn Herman. And the way that this was kind of set up, it almost sounded like the Hunger Games with just some magic involved, and there was just a lot going on with it that I really enjoyed, or like I thought I would really enjoy. But as I kind of got into it, it just felt like it wasn't what I was expecting. Like, I felt like all the stakes that it was kind of promising just were thrown out the window, and like it just went on a whole tangents, and it went in ways that I kind of wished it didn't. I might be kind of like an unpopular opinion with that, but I will finish off the little duology because I'm stubborn like that, and I still enjoyed it. Like, I was just expecting a lot more from it. So I don't know. I haven't checked out anything of these authors before. It was kind of just like going in blind and hoping that it would kind of turn out the way I kind of expected, but sadly it did not. And then on a different side of things, it was your biggest surprise. And the first one, I did a whole nother review for this, and it was How High We Go in the Dark by Sequoia Nagamatsu. And this is kind of like a dystopia, and it's very similar to kind of Cloud Atlas or anything by Emily St. John Mandel, but it kind of involved this kind of climate plague that just completely changed the face of Earth, and you just see like a progression of time with different perspectives and seeing how they're kind of handling what's going on around them. And it was just very emotional. It touched a lot on just grief and loss and regrets. Like, there was just so much discussed in it, and I almost dropped the second one. But it was just like, I wasn't expecting to enjoy it, and honestly, I just put it on my anticipated releases because it kind of sounded interesting, and I thought since we were just coming out of COVID, it would kind of be interesting to kind of hear about this kind of climate thing and how it kind of impacted these people, and see how Sequoia Nagamatsu was kind of inspired by the daily experiences that he went through. But that other one that I almost dropped on the floor was Imaginary Friend by Stephen Chbosky. This, honestly, is kind of like a little bit of a horror, but it almost felt like The Goonies mixed with It and mixed with Stranger Things. Like, there was just a lot of just things that I've absolutely loved kind of mixed into this. And I listened to this as an audiobook. I found that the narrator did an absolutely outstanding job, even with like the children's perspectives and doing their kind of voiceovers. I thought she did like a perfect job of kind of painting a vivid image in my mind. Stephen Chbosky's kind of writing flowed so perfectly. It was just outstanding. Kind of flowed with the story as well, and just everything about this was just everything that I want in a novel, but I wasn't expecting. So there was just a lot that I enjoyed about this. I could go on about this for a while. The only things that I kind of disliked about it was it seemed a bit long and dragged out at times, but I feel like it was all kind of needed to kind of explain things, because there's just, I can't really say much without spoiling it, but there's just a ton going on within this setup and this plot. So we kind of had to take different avenues to kind of explain just a lot of what's going on. This next one is your favorite new author. This could be like a debut or one that you've just discovered. And honestly, Joe Abercrombie has went from an author that I knew absolutely nothing about a couple years ago into being one of my top authors of all time. I'm currently flying through The Blade itself, which is his first in the First Law trilogy. Just his characters that he's created, and the humor that he involves, and it's kind of a bit introducing a lot of what's going on, so there isn't much of a plot yet, but I've also kind of been picking up on things he's kind of been foreshadowing, so I'm excited to see how this will progress. But I feel like I've just loved spending time with these characters that I just don't care, and just the way that his writing style kind of flows, and his prose that he involves, his character descriptions. There's just so much going on with here. I'm hoping to get more into kind of his action sequences, because that is one thing that I've heard nothing but great things about. Like, his just battle sequences and everything just flow so perfectly and paint a perfect image in your mind. So Joe Abercrombie is my favorite new author that I've kind of discovered, and I can't wait to get to more of his novels. Then we have your favorite new fictional crush. I've got two here. I've got Alanique from the Skyward series. She's kind of an alien, but all I gotta say is, if I was to be abducted by aliens, I hope it would be her. The other one would have to be Vasya from the Bear the Nightingale trilogy. She's like not considered like the most beautiful, and I feel like a lot of the times the other perspectives kind of portrayed her as just kind of ugly at times, but beauty is much more than kind of good looks, and she's just so strong-willed, confident, brave, and like I just really enjoyed kind of spending time with Vasya and seeing how she's kind of growing and just becoming like this strong woman. So she had to become one of my new fictional crushes. Next up, we have your newest favorite character, and I couldn't just stick to one, so I just got a whole list here. I'm just gonna read them off. So I have Lucy or Theodore from The House on the Cerulean Sea. Lucy because he was just absolutely hilarious. Theodore because he was a weaver. And then I have Amos from the Expanse just series. He's one of the crew of the Rocky, and I just love the things that he kind of brings to the crew. And then Spencer from the Skyward series. I just love how she's kind of a little bit confident and overconfident at times, but you definitely see her kind of grow. She's very stubborn in the first book, but she kind of, like I mentioned, grows with each book, and I'm excited to see how it kind of continues on with the series. Any of the characters within John Gwyn's Bloodsworn trilogy, Elvar, Varg, Orca, like I feel like they're just some of the best I've ever read, and I've just loved kind of seeing them improve and grow and learn more about with each book, and I'm a bit scared to see how kind of it'll all top off in the third book. And then recently, Inigo and Fezzik from The Princess Bride. I loved their kind of little duo and their friendship, their loyalty to each other, and the things that they would just do for each other. Like, I just love their dynamics and everything involved with them, as well as how they kind of were incorporated into the story. Getting close to the end, we have the book that made you cry. And I usually don't cry within books. I've been looking for like books to make me cry. I don't know what that says about me. But one that had me on the verge of tears was A Man Called Ove by Frederick Bachman. And the other one that had me crying several times throughout the book was How High We Go in the Dark by Sequoia Nagamatsu. Like, that just touched on a lot. It was tough to read at times, and I really went more in depth with why it kind of brought out those emotions within my review. So if you want to learn more, definitely check that out. And then on the opposite side of the spectrum, the book that made you the happiest. And I would mention Alice in Wonderland, but I've already talked about it a ton. But one of my most recent reads was actually The Princess Bride by William Goldman. I really want to check out this movie adaptation and see how kind of loyal it is to this novel. But this is where Inigo and Fezzik come in, and this was just like another breath of fresh air, and just a palate cleanser between just a ton of just epic fantasy. I absolutely flew through this. It almost felt like a fairy tale, or like one of the Grimm's kind of fairy tale. But William Goldman almost kind of poked fun at all the kind of fairy tale tropes that we've all heard and seen a million times on Disney or anything like that. And it almost like threw in like plot twists and all kinds of stuff. Like, there was just new twists and turns with each kind of chapter. And I just loved the story, the characters, and seeing kind of the plot grow and seeing how it all kind of finished off. I think this is really popular and a lot of people do enjoy it, but if you haven't, just give this a try. Like, I have a feeling that you will just absolutely fall in love with the story and the characters and everything. Down to the last two, and this second to last one is the most beautiful book that you've received this year. And for this, I have to give it to This Woven Kingdom by Tahara Mafi. This was actually another one of my most anticipated releases, and it's kind of like a Persian mythology inspired. And I've heard great things about the author in general, but this cover, like, there's no kind of like a slip cover or anything like that. Like, it is just like absolutely gorgeous, and it's got the stenciled edges, and it's almost simplistic and beautiful at the same time. Like, I can't wait to dive into this, but I definitely won't be reading with this copy because I'm afraid to ruin it. So I'll definitely have to pick up like an ebook from my library or something like this. And the last question is just some books that you really want to finish before the year is, and I've got a ton of just more fantasy and sci-fi that I really want to dive into. But these are on the top of my agenda, and the first one is that I'm absolutely ashamed that I haven't read this yet, but I really want to pick up The Lord of the Rings by J.R. Tolkien. I hope to start The Hobbit either next month or the next month and just completely finish the series this year, binge all the movies, and just fall in love. I hope to fall in love with this like everybody else. And then another one that I'm actually really ashamed to say I haven't seen any of the TV adaptation either. That is A Song of Ice and Fire by George R.R. Martin. I'm a bit scared to pick these up because these are some thick books, and this is like a mass market paperback, and the words are pretty small. So I have some eye issue problems. Can't see very far, so we'll see how that turns out with these little books. And the last one is actually a trilogy, and it is the Broken Earth trilogy by N.K. Jemisin. This is the only author, I believe, or she is the only author to have won the Hugo Award for each book in the trilogy. And everyone seems to rave about it. So I'm really hoping that I enjoy this just as much as everyone else. Like, even the concepts and the kind of blend of sci-fi and fantasy, like, it all just sounds perfect. And she also threw in like something that a lot of authors don't do. She kind of played with the second person narration, so I'm very interested to see how that will kind of be incorporated into the story and see how it'll kind of flow with the story and progress with each book. So those were all the whole ones that I need to finish before the end of the year. I'm hoping to. Also, The Expanse, I really want to finish that before the end of the year. That's a 9-book series, and I'm on book 3. So that might be pretty tough to get in before the end of the year. But that's going to be all for today's video. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing you in the next adventure. If you did enjoy, please consider liking and subscribing so you never miss out on another adventure. But it is time for Ellie to come on here and first wish you all to have a splendid day. But she also says that adventure is out there. So I'll catch you next time. Bye.